Good afternoon, class. Well, let's turn off the air conditioner. Uh, I was thinking of what might be our fiction book coming up, and I was thinking about giving you guys a little notes on format for the way I want my channel to look. And I think it's going to be Zen book, fiction book, something like non-fiction book, fiction Zen. Or since next I want to do a fiction book, then I want a Zen book. So basically I'm thinking non-fiction, fiction, Zen, non-fiction, fiction, Zen. Or just focus on some children's and young adults stories. And then I don't know. Again, I'm still I'm not mopey, I'm moopy. I'm still a little mopey. I was having this great conversation in my brain. It was a great argument I was having in my brain earlier. It was so epic. I was like, if I had the camera, I'd been like, it's rant time. We don't know. Maybe we'll rant if it comes up in our reading. If it applies. It was just a real sarcastic rant. What was it about? Some kind of rebellion to authority. I'm so tired. I still have to work 3 more days. Or more than that, 4 more days. Alright guys, what is this? Part 13. Did I mark? Alright. Here we go. I'm in the mood. Less immediately obvious as an example of faulty conditioning is long-term depression, a syndrome which American psychologist Martin Seligman has termed learned helplessness. He discovered the phenomenon in an unexpected fashion. He and his colleagues were testing a particular learning theory on dogs, which involved giving electric shocks to dogs that were strapped down and therefore couldn't avoid them. Poor nasty, natty little bastards. Did I or did I not mention to you how punishment has no effect on learning? Did I get into that rant? But here we are, we're still trying to do it. We're testing a learning theory on dogs this time. We're going to give them an electric shock. You know, they can't get away from it. Oh, sorry. It's like Milgram gone mad. No, man. You know why it didn't work? Because you should have been using the real shocks. This had nothing to do with my rant that I had in my head earlier. It's just amazing what they do. Okay, shh. This is why nobody watched the first 10. Oh, yeah. Later in the experiment, the dogs were put in boxes from which they could escape when given a shock, if they learned to jump over the barrier. But, to the researchers' surprise, the dogs made a cursory attempt to get away by running around inside the box and then instantly gave up, resigned to quit whining while suffering the series of shocks. Finally, researchers realized what had happened. The dogs were reacting to their previous experience of being strapped down and unable to escape the pain of the electric shocks. Why, They had totally been unable to control what was happening to them, and what they had learned as a result was that any actions of their own had no effect, and that therefore they were helpless. Holy shit. Well, surprise! Were you surprised to learn that? Duh! Oh, give it a name. Shall we name it after Martin Spielman? Yes, we're going to call it the Spiegelman effect. I'm so proud. I want my Nobel Prize. That piece of learning was applied to any new situation, too, even where they weren't helpless, as in the second box, with the same people. Anyway, from this, Selig, did I even say his name right the first time? Seligman came to see that the same syndrome operating in people suffering from reactive depression, the type of depression that ensues as a reaction to some clear external stress, such a loss of a relative or lover, or being sacked from a job, or having a bad boyfriend, or having stupid parents, or ugly bosses. Oh, sorry. According to Seligman, My name almost sounds like Sigmund. Seligman. According to Seligman, people who suffer a series of such setbacks about which they can do nothing have learned that they have no control over any of the events in their lives, that whatever they do, things will turn out badly in the end, therefore they give up trying. I know this happens. I'm just mocking the surprise when you torture dogs that such a thing happens. Wow. No, I know you have a theory, but let's try it out on these dogs first, okay? Alright. They see themselves as failures and lose all motivation and interest in life, at the same time putting themselves down and wallowing in misery. Seligman puts his theory to the test. He subjected students to the unpleasant experience of being in a room where a loud, discordant sound was coming from a piece of equipment. No matter what knobs they turned, they couldn't turn it off, which was as the experimenter intended. On a later occasion, the students were waiting in another room where they could have the power to control the annoying drone coming from the equipment, but they didn't even bother to try. The only way to help people who suffer learned helplessness depression, says Seligman, is to concentrate on showing the depressive person that he can operate on his environment and be effectual, perhaps by giving him simple tasks in therapy. Oh yeah? Okay. Perhaps by giving him simple tasks in therapy at which he can succeed, develop confidence, and then move on to harder ones. I do like this. Okay, I do like this. The aim is to break the conditioned conviction that nothing ever works. Conditioned helplessness can perhaps be manifested as a blunting of feeling. Writing in the Daily Mail on May 14, 1981, after Pope John Paul II was shot, shortly after a similar attempt had been made on President Reagan, Anthony Burgess said, "That Pope John Paul II should be fired at and hit is no surprise, but there is something profoundly wrong with our age when we are no longer capable of such surprise. Fortunately, it might be more amazing if we were capable of surprise when events of the recent past, Unfortunately, it might be more amazing If we were capable of surprise when events of the recent past, which include regular assassination attempts on American presidents and other people in positions of power or fame, condition us to associate such standing with possible violent death and desensitize us to it when it happens, well, that's what you must expect if you're going to be a politician or a pop star or this or that. That's what you got to expect, people come to say, as though the threat of violent death were a natural concomitant of reaching public notice. This another modern example is, well, you're gonna get haters. That's normal. The point was made rather poignantly by the Observer reporter Colin Smith after an air raid on Lebanon in July 1981, which left hundreds of people dead or wounded. Smith wrote, "One father objected to my taking a photograph of his daughter, a girl of about 11, who had been brought in to the Gaza hospital with shrapnel wounds. But the world must see what's happened," said the doctors, whose name was Imad. "The world has seen these pictures 1,000 times before," snapped the parent. "When did it ever stop anything?" the father had said. In the Observer, July 19th, 1981. While we unconsciously become desensitized to violence, we can still experience outrage at a program that deliberately sets out to achieve that aim. In, desensitized to violence, I have a note about TV for later. In 1975, the Sunday Times published a story in which it was claimed that special units existed to train people to act as assassins. The reporter, Peter Watson, while researching his book, War on the Mind, had attended a NATO-sponsored conference on stress and anxiety. One speaker, Dr. Thomas Narat, from the U.S. Naval Hospital at the NATO headquarters in Naples, spoke about coping with stress and, in the process, let slip that the techniques he had mentioned were being used with combat readiness units, designed to train people to cope with the stress of killing. Intrigued as to what this meant, Watson had 2 discussions with Narat, from which he learned that Dr. Narat was referencing, when he had said combat readiness unit, to the ordinary commando unit and to naval men who were put into embassies abroad, ready to be called upon to kill if required. He also said, Watson writes in The War on the Mind, that men from the military prisons were being selected to act as assassins in embassies overseas. The full story, as told to Watson, was as follows. Dr. Narat's doctoral thesis had been concerned to discover whether particular films could provoke anxiety, and whether that anxiety could be coped with more easily if a man was required to do some ordinary task while watching such a film. The work he subsequently did for the Navy also concerned films, but this time the aim was to find a way to induce servicemen who were not inclined to kill to be able to do so under certain conditions. The method investigated was the screening of films which showed people being maimed or killed violently, with the aim of desensitizing the men to such acts. Amongst the men selected by U.S. naval psychologists for this training were convicted murderers from military prisons. Watson described the so-called stress reduction training as it was described to him. Men selected are taken for training to the Navy Hospital in Naples or to the Neuropsychiatric Laboratory in San Diego, California. The men are taught to shoot, but also given a special type of Clockwork Orange training to quell any qualms they may have about killing. It works like this. The men are shown a series of gruesome films, which get progressively more horrific. The trainee is forced to watch by having his head bolted in a clamp so he cannot turn away, and a special device keeps his eyelids open. One of the first films shows an African youth being crudely circumcised by fellow members of his tribe. No anesthetic is used, and the knife is obviously blunt. When the film is over, the trainee is asked irrelevant questions such as, what was the motif on the handle of the knife? Or, how many people were holding the youth down? In another, camera follows the movements of a man at work in a sawmill, slicing his way through planks of wood. Film shows his thrusting movements until he slips and cuts his finger off. Physiological measures are taken to ensure that the men really do learn to remain calm while watching. And afterwards, the men are shown films and given lectures in which people and customs in foreign countries whose interests might be counter to those of the United States were depicted in a biased subhuman light. The whole process took a few weeks. Alright, let's back that up again. So part of this training was that they would see mockeries of foreign cultures and clothing, especially if they're different, might be counter to the U.S. were depicted in a subhuman light. The dehumanization of others. You must make your enemy inhuman before you are capable of doing inhuman things to him. It's basic. I think here would be good. Well, it's almost time to stop, but we can get up to the process takes a few weeks. The Pentagon denied the whole story. Nuh-uh. So we're going to pause here and talk about TV. I gave up watching regular television many long times ago, and that doesn't mean I don't watch things occasionally or binge watch a TV show or whatnot. And I've noticed different effects. I've noticed an effect. I think I'm going to take this into the 20 minutes, so we are going to pause there. I've noticed this effect of, high intensity. Like you are desensitized to the suspension of disbelief that you put yourselves under when you watch TV. So let's say y'all remember the show Quantum Leap. You ought to watch that show. It basically encapsulates my idea of this nice rounded idea of a human morality. But whatever, don't want to talk about that. What I want to talk about that is when I sit down because I want to watch that show, I have to have breaks. Then, like a 45-minute show, I can only watch so much, because when the level of intensity builds up toward the climax, I am and I got to get away from it. And I'm like, gee whiz, I don't get like this over every little thing. I get like this because they on TV are using various factors to make it more of a engaging experience for you. You've got the music, you've got the what do you call that, suspense of it, and everything's great. I don't know I forget what I'm trying to end off with, but what I'm saying is, but what thrills me so much doesn't thrill you as much because you're used to it. What disgusts me, and I can't look at the gross things. I don't want to see psychotic things. This is poetically done. Anyway, is not like you have to have more blowing up. You have to have more beating up. You have to have more car chases or intense near-miss situations just to keep your entertainment level Like, so we've systematically needed more thrill in our stories, less story. But in the olden days, the story lasted forever because people were thrilled with the happening in the story. Like, why are some things classics that never die? I mean, it's probably a boring, like Casablanca, it's probably boring to somebody today unless they already have it planted in them that it was a great movie, they expect a great movie, therefore they watch and they get drawn into the characters and the acting, and those human actors were carrying a passion and intensity every bit as much as the thrill that I come under when I watch TV, when I don't watch, that human interaction is just as much thrill. But kids today might miss that passion because they're so used to storylines of today. I don't know, I probably went off the deep end, huh? I'm just tired today, rambling. TV does desensitize us to violence. It does put it in an unreal capsule, an easier place for us to go, I just sort of stepped out and watched myself do it. Because you have watched it be done so much that it's easy to pop into a mindless role play. So that's I think kind of how TV contributes to violence. It's the devil. It's the devil. Anyway, look, goodbye.